The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the person or persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the Madison Church of Christ.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Larry Souder, and welcome to Stories of Amazing Grace. We're coming to you from Victory Chapel at the Madison Church of Christ in Madison, Tennessee. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us on video as well. Our theme scripture comes from Romans 8:38 through 39. I am sure that nothing can separate us from God's love, not life or death, not angels or spirits, not the present or the future, and not powers above or powers below. Nothing in all creation can separate us from God's love, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Well, if you saw the special edition of We Connect that came out a day or two ago, it talks about Don and Carole Belles being on Stories of Amazing Grace. It says there are certain people in life who you just enjoy listening to. They can make a dull story sound incredibly amazing. So imagine what they can do with their own adventure-packed life story. So the pressure is on them tonight to perform. And I'm glad the ladies class chose to be with us by force tonight. Thank you for coming in as well. Before we hear Don and Carole, take a look at this video.
Let's go explore God's underwater world.
We're about 6 weeks out from the start of the 2012 archery season, so it's time to get serious about getting ready to hunt. And that would be one dead deer at 40 yards. You see him? He crashed. He's the chocolate bear. Chocolate bear. Bang. Hello, my name is Don Bellis. Jimmy Seitz refers to me as his veteran cameraman. Well, I don't know about that, but I can tell you one thing. I do like my UTV, but even though I'm in better shape than Jimmy, I've reached a stage in my life where I just simply can't load a deer into the bed of this UTV by myself. Now, I think I've got a solution. The power loader by Great Day. Well, that's it. Only took about an hour to install the power loader. And you know what's really neat about the design of this power loader? There are 4 thumb screws here that you can remove without the use of tools and completely take the power loader off the machine. Pretty cool. Now, let's go load my deer.
Great day, making great days in the outdoors.
Beautiful fish. 2 nice ones. We're going to let one go because it's too much fish for us to eat. Who caught these fish, Papa?
I'm afraid to say that it was Nana who caught these fish.
But you caught a little one.
Don and Carole Belles. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
You emailed me 2 or 3 times before this interview and said that you were going to be nervous and that you were going to throw up.
Yeah.
I brought this along just in
okay.
case.
Thank you.
I want you to have it.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the past. We have a picture when you were first married. Tell me who these people are.
I
What
don't
year
even
was
recognize them.
What year was this?
1963.
1963.
63. And where did you meet?
Well, here's the story about that.
All right.
You see, both of us were attending the University of Maryland, and I was in a men's dormitory, Carole was in a girls' dormitory, and there was this charity event at the University of Maryland. Now, the project became a joint one between the girls' dormitory and the boys' dormitory. Now, the girls were interested in generating income for the charity. The guys were interested in meeting the girls. So I met Carole that evening, and the rest is history.
Here you are. And you moved from Pennsylvania to Tennessee. Tell me about that experience of coming down here.
Well, Carole and I married as soon as I graduated from the university. We had our 2.4 children. We moved to the suburbs, and we bought a house, and we were living in Pennsylvania. I had been working for, about 10 years in the industrial and commercial field, but there was something just not quite right. I said to Carole one day, it's time for me to move on. I was always pointed in the direction of having my own business. And I said, I've been 10 years in this field, it's time for me to move on. And Carole, being my helpmate, I said, would you prepare and update my resume and prepare some letters of inquiry? And remember, now this is long before the days of word processing, so her moniker was Fast Fingers back in the day when you used CBs. But anyhow, Carole dutifully typed up a bunch of resumes. I didn't tell her how many to type. I said, just type up a bunch of resumes and a bunch of letters of inquiry. I'll contact the University of Maryland and see what kind of job opportunities exist. And so in the mail comes a big batch of job opportunities. And so I start sorting through these things, and I'm interested in this one, I'm not in this one, and so I throw a bunch of them away, and finally I stuff envelopes with the jobs that I'm interested in. And lo and behold, I get to the end of the process, and I have one more resume and one more letter that Carole has prepared, and I might as well use them if she's prepared them. So I dig back through my trash can, and I find this job opening in Tennessee. Well, now, I had worked for 10 years in the industrial quarter in the Northeast, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and I'm thinking, Tennessee? Get serious. But I couldn't find anything else, so what the heck, I sent it in. Well, I interviewed with General Motors. They made me a nice offer. It didn't feel right. I interviewed with a couple federal agencies. They made me offers. Didn't feel right. And by the way, I was offered a job at Cape Kennedy at the time, taking over fire protection there, right after the 2 astronauts were killed on the pad. Didn't feel right. So finally I said, you know what? These people in Tennessee have called me. I think I'll go down and talk to them. I came down and I talked to them, and guess what? I accepted the job in Tennessee. I would have never believed it. If you'd have said, when I started that journey, if you'd have said, where are you going to end up? If you said, Nashville, I'd have said, you're nuts. But there was someone else that had a plan, and he was working the plan. And so I accepted the job, and the day before I was to leave Carole and my 2 children behind in Pennsylvania to sell the house, take our only car, drive to Nashville, I went to visit with my mother and father. And my mother was working at the time in the store, and I went in and I said, Mom, I'm here to visit, and so we had a nice visit. And my mom said, I ran into Dick Bestetter's wife, or mother, yesterday. Now, Dick Bestetter, everybody in high school has one good friend. This was my good friend. And I had had no contact with Dick for 10 years. He went into the ministry, I went into engineering, and we just parted.
But you didn't know that.
I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know. He just went out of my life. And I had a family, and I was working, and I was busy, and we just didn't communicate for 10 years. The day before I'm to leave for Nashville, my mom runs into Dick's mom. And my mom tells Dick's mom, Don's going to Tennessee. And Dick's mother says, well, Dick is living in Tennessee. And she gives my mother his telephone number. So then my mother says, Dick is living in Tennessee, here's his telephone number. I go, oh, shit, sure. Like, I'm going to stop. I'm leaving my family behind. I'm driving to Nashville to take on a new job, new responsibilities. Yeah, sure. I'm going to stop when I get to Tennessee and call this fellow that I had never talked to for 10 years. Well, I crossed the line into Tennessee. Didn't know anything about really Tennessee. I was in East Tennessee, and I'm almost out of gas. So I pull into a service station, and I'm at the service station pumping gas. And I have no idea why. But I reached, and I felt that note in my pocket. And I opened it up, and I looked at it. And there was a payphone. Back in those days, there were still payphones on the pole. And it only cost a dime. And I thought I could afford a dime. And would you believe it? I put the dime in that phone booth. And I dialed the number. And I said, Dick, it's Don. And it was just like we'd never parted. And he said, well, gee, it's wonderful to hear from you. Where are you? And I go, I don't know. I'm in Tennessee. I'm at a gas station. I'm pumping gas. And your mom, blah, blah, blah. And I'm calling you. He goes, well, where are you? So I described, he said, you're 15 minutes from my house. Wait there. I'll be right there. So he shows up. He takes me home, feeds me, talked to me about my spiritual life. Now, what are the chances? What are the chances that I'm going to call this man that I haven't talked to in 10 years? They're zero. What are the chances that I'm going to have to stop for gas 15 minutes from his house, not even having any idea where he is in Tennessee? It's 550 miles diagonally across the state. I'm 15 minutes from his house.
That's why they call this Stories of Amazing Grace.
Well, how can you leave that?
Go ahead.
Well, Dick gave me a couple tracts, told me a little. I find out he's a preacher in the Church of Christ. I said, I'd never heard of the Church of Christ. We were lily wavers. We were sometime Methodists. We went to church at Easter time. We went to Christmas. Sometimes. We were lily wavers. I mean, we believed in a supreme being, but we were not spiritual. Mm-hmm. And so I had a nice discussion with my friend. He gave me a couple tracts, and then we started to talk by telephone. And then eventually Carole and the children arrived in Nashville, and we bought a house in Hendersonville. And I said, Carole, you know, I think we need to investigate this Church of Christ. My friend Dick talks very kindly about it, and we ought to go give it a whirl.
And we thought Carole was the talker here.
Well, what can I say? All these years, my ears are, you know.
Let me let Carole pick up some of the story here.
I'll jump right in here.
So you moved to the area here, and you visited a
it's
church.
It's late
of
one
Christ.
night, and I'm unpacking, and Don says, I think we need to try the Church of Christ tomorrow morning. I'm like, I am dead tired, Don, but I'm a good wife. Yes, I'll iron the children's dresses, and we'll go in the morning. And he said, there's a Church of Christ right up the street. We'll go there. I said, okay, that would be fine. I really didn't have a real good attitude, but we went, we walked in, and the first thing I said was, I had a 6-month-old and a 3.5-year-old, where's your nursery? And they said, we don't have a nursery. We encourage our parents to keep the children with them during services. I thought, maybe your kids, but not mine. And we went in there and sat down. I thought, okay, all right, I'm going to do this. And I said, where's the organ? He said, they have a cappella music. Is that the guy up there doing that? Yeah, that's it, okay. I say, I'm chasing one kid and I'm chasing the other kid, and they sang all 4 verses to the song. Every time they did that, then lo and behold, here comes communion, which my kids think is a snack. So I'm resting with them there with that and everything. We got everything, but we were welcomed with open arms. It was wonderful. And we walked out, and I said to Don, I hope you don't think that's going to happen again. And so the next Sunday I said to him, I'm going back to my church. And I went to my church, and they had a nursery, they had an organ, they only sang the first and third verses. But there was something missing, and I know what it is now, it's the Holy Spirit, but God was pricking our hearts to seek him. He was seeking us, but he was pricking our hearts to seek him. So I said to Don when I got home, I said, we've got to do something. We've got to find some place to go. We are seeking something for our children, if not just for us. And I mentioned to the girl next door, and she said, well, have you tried Madison Church of Christ? I said, no. She said, well, give that a try. And I said, okay. Yeah, right. So I said, okay. So that was a Sunday afternoon. Monday, now it's hot. I'm a Yankee, in case you didn't know. It's hot. The air conditioner's not working. He's back there working on the air conditioning, which is probably why it wasn't working. And I'm standing there at the window, and we're just about to finish dinner, and I look up, and this black car pulls in the driveway. And these two men get out, and they've got a briefcase. And I thought, oh, a Southwestern salesman, I've heard about them. He's in the back yelling, who is it? I said, that's salesman, I'll get rid of him, don't worry about it. Came to the door. Now, I've got on short shorts, a halter top, I got one kid wrapped here, another one here, and a cool filter hanging out of my mouth. And I said, who are you and what do you want? And they said, we're Wes Allen and Bob Dillard, and we're from the Madison Church of Christ. We'd like to talk to you about the plan of salvation. I said, well, come on in. And they did.
And you were dunked right then?
Huh?
You were dunked right then? Or?
No, it took a little bit longer than that. They came in, and they were absolutely wonderful. We asked a lot of questions. Engineer asked a lot of questions. There were a lot of things. And what impressed me about them was not only their love for the Lord, but the fact that if they didn't know an answer, they would say, I'm not sure about that. We'll get back to you next week. And the next week they would come, and bingo, there was the answer. And at the end of about 7 weeks, we said, we would like to be baptized. And so I said, I don't want to do that in front of the congregation, because I'll throw up. But we'll do it on a Wednesday night. And so we did it on a Wednesday night, and we were baptized, and I could say the rest is history, but there's a lot more than that.
Wow, interesting. Let's take a look at some of your family pictures here.
There's Tolly Orlando.
And Dawn. And the next one, there you go.
Yeah, a little older.
A little bit older. And tell me about horses. We don't have horses here, we have horses here. What's the story about horses?
Tell us about the horses, Don.
Well, one of my oldest daughter, Lisa, decided she wanted to take riding lessons. And so she started taking riding lessons, and lo and behold, a few weeks later, the horse that she was riding on her lessons came up for sale. And so we thought, what can it hurt? We'll just buy a horse.
We had lived in Greenbrier. We lived in Greenbrier. We had a farm.
No, we didn't. We were living in
time.
Hendersonville at the time.
Right. Forget
and
I
so
said that.
Ultimately, we ended up with 26 horses, like 6. I mean, once you start buying a horse, you just can't stop. And this was one of our outings. I was riding Tonto, the Appaloosa. That's me on the right, in case you can't tell. Carole was riding Crossbell Cutie, which was a wonderfully successful show horse. We ultimately ended up showing horses all over the Southeast, Columbus, Ohio, at the All-American Quarter Horse Congress, and Dixie Nationals in Jackson, Mississippi. But it was a family activity.
It was a family activity.
And we were the only family to show horses at that level. And we did it on our own. We hauled the horses, we groomed them. I don't know where in the world we found the time and the energy
we were young
to do this.
Let me back up a little bit here. You talked about coming to Tennessee for your job. Was this in fire protection?
Yes, sir.
And one of the magazines here. The official magazine of the National Fire Protection Association. You know, when I first met you, do you remember one of the first experiences I had with you years ago?
I know that I was operating a camera and you were yelling at me.
Well, that maybe. But before that even, above Granny's house was the old studio, which we were putting in at the time in 1990. And I was putting in egg crate mattress coverings in the ceiling for sound dampening. And you came in and didn't quite like that because it would be a fire hazard. And I ripped all that out, of course. But that was my first experience with you. I know many people have had bad experiences with me, but that was my first experience with you. Is Larry, that stuff there's going to catch on fire, and you're going to have smoke in here and kill people. So I had to take it down, which I did. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah.
Anyhow, this article here starts off by saying his reassuring voice. There he is. His reassuring voice and friendly manner.
Yeah.
Now, belie the intensity and focus that have made Don Belles one of the most respected fire protection engineering consultants in the country. That's
Amen.
That's pretty nice. Now, there was one time though that you were let go from a job, and you may not want to talk about that. We won't in detail, but the reason is because of your ethics, because of your integrity. Can you tell us about that without puffing yourself up too much?
Well, as you heard, I came to Tennessee to begin to enforce building and fire codes for the state. The state had always adopted building and fire codes, but they were not enforced. And so I took over that function for the state, and there came a time where I was asked to approve a project that I couldn't approve. It did not comply with the state building codes. And I was ordered to approve it, and at which point I resigned. And it was always in my mind to go into private practice, but I wasn't expecting to go into private practice right at that particular time. However, I have to say in retrospect that I was at least 4 times better off. Now, not the first year. The first year, I think my income was like a quarter of what it was before I left the job. But
We were hungry.
But you did the right thing, and ultimately it turned out
Well,
good.
it turned out quite well. I had half the problems and twice the money, so I was 4 times better off.
Yeah.
I was proud of him for doing that. I really was.
Let's move to a tragedy in your life. A plane crash.
In 1971, my mom and dad were in their own plane on their way to visit my aunt and uncle in Calhoun, Georgia, and they hit a mountain, and they were killed. We had been members at Madison less than a year. No, about a year and a half, almost 2. And the outpouring of love from this church, the first thing we got up there was a telegram from the elders. Sorry for your loss, elders, Madison Church of Christ. That was just wonderful. I mean, that was comforting. The whole situation was just really hard to deal with, but we came back here. I didn't cook for a week. We had different groups bring food, and the sympathy, the cards, the calls, the love, it was palpable. I could feel it, and it was God working in all the people here, helping me to cope with the grief that I felt.
What were some other good things that came out of that? Concerning your sister, she was not on the plane?
No, thank you. The night before, my sister and her husband were having dinner with my mom and dad, and my dad said, why don't you go with us tomorrow to Calhoun? I only have one sister. And Mike said, oh yeah, we're going to do it, because he loved to do that. My sister said, no, we can't do that. It would be the second time we canceled out on your parents to go with my parents, and that would not be good. And Mike wasn't real happy about it. But he said, okay, and if they had been with them, I would have lost my whole family at once, so.
And the wreckage was found in an
You've talked about
unusual
that.
way.
Well, yeah, it was a pretty trying Sunday afternoon. Carol and I had company at home, and another couple that was visiting with us when I got the call. And her mom and dad had hit this mountain Sunday morning, and within an hour or 2 of the crash, this person was cruising a mountain trail in the area of northwest Georgia and came upon the wreckage. They saw where the trees were clipped off and the bodies were still warm. I mean, it could have been months before we ever figured out, what happened to them. And then, the fact that Carol's sister, was invited to join them on this trip was a blessing for us, because it would have been everyone in the family.
Terrible thing.
God is good. God is good.
You were asked to teach here at Madison during VBS,
I was.
but you didn't teach the biblical truth all the time, did you?
No, I didn't. You had to bring that up. I went one day, Lisa was 5 years old, and I went to drop her off at her room, and Billy Bradley, one of the sweetest people in the world, said, my co-teacher didn't show up, and I have 16 5-year-olds. Would you be willing to stay? I said, yeah, I'd love to. I was in elementary education before I fell in love and got married. And so I only went 2 years. I said, yes, I'd love to. So I watched her teach for about 3 weeks, and she said, would you like to teach? And I said, I'd love to. And she said, next week I'd like you to teach the story of Jonah. I said, oh, I know that story. That'll be great. I'll be glad to do that. So I got some visuals. I got some puppets. I did a finger play or two. And I presented the lesson of Jonah and the whale. And when I got through, all the kids were gone. I said to Billy, I said, okay, can you critique me? Can you do it? And she said, well, you did a great job with the visuals. You did a great job with the puppets. I love the finger play. But we don't know if it was a whale. I said, yeah, we do. That's what I heard my whole life. It's Jonah and the whale. She said, in the Bible it says big fish. I said, well, a whale's a big fish. Yes, it is, but it says big fish, and we want to teach what it says in the Bible. We don't want to add to or take away from it. I said, okay. I said, yep, point well taken. Is there anything else, that other people do? And she said, well, we don't know it was an apple in the garden. I said, we don't. She said, no, it's a fruit. It could have been anything. And I said, oh, tell me more. And she said, well, we don't know that there were 3 wise men. We know gold, frankincense, and myrrh. We had 3 gifts, but could have been 5 bringing the 3 gifts, could have been 2 bringing the 3 gifts. Very important that you teach what's in the Bible, and why I'm taking all this in. I said, so you mean to tell me that we don't know exactly how many wise men were at the manger? They weren't at the manger? All those nativity scenes in Hendersonville are wrong? She said, I'm afraid so. What she did in a loving way was teach me to go to the Bible first, the teacher's manual second, and when I write a Bible story, to make sure the responsibility that I had to impart God's word correctly to these little hearts and little minds. And it was a very good lesson. And I don't know of anybody that could have done it any better than she did.
And later on, Granny's house came about. How did that come about?
Sue and Jim Hunter were supervisors for a long, long time down in the preschool department. And I had started teaching there, and Don had started teaching there with me from time to time. And one day, they decided that they were going to do a Granny's house. And they did a Granny's house in a small room. Well, the elders, thank you, in all their wisdom, when we did the renovation, gave us a Granny's house where we could bring the entire department in at once. Otherwise, we were having to do these lessons once a week for 6 weeks to get them all done. We could bring them in and do them all at once. So that worked out really, really well. And then they decided, it's not a new concept, but it was to us, we were going to be Bible land travelers. We were going to dress the children in costume and take them out of the room and get them involved in the story, because according to some of the wait a minute.
Sure.
She has
Thank
a
you.
drinking problem.
Yeah.
You brought your own, too.
According to some of the statistics, and I don't have them all right, children remember 60% of what they see, 70% of what they hear, and 90% of what they do. So it became imperative to involve them in the Bible story and have them remember it. So the first one, we did Noah. I was Noah. He was the voice of God. We did Moses. I was Moses. He was the voice of God. I'm thinking, now wait a minute. This is, he's carrying this over into the house. So third one I did was Balaam and the donkey. I was Balaam.
We don't talk about that.
What a fabulous way to teach children the Bible, is to let them participate, be part of it, and just love it.
We got a picture of Queen Carole here, I think, coming up. Preschool department head and your subjects.
We had a great group.
I think we had another shot of Granny's house also. Yeah. With some puppets. And we have a short video. Let's play that of Granny's house.
Come with us and follow Jesus. Come along and follow him. decided Jesus is our friend.
While Samuel and Eli were lying down in the temple, Samuel heard a voice calling his name.
She gave me some fruit and I ate it.
That snake tricked me and I ate some of the forbidden fruit.
My God has sent an angel to shut the lion's mouth, and they have not hurt me because I have done no wrong.
Oh, I like that Bible story. God can do anything, can he, Granny? He certainly can, Jenny.
Do you miss it? 40 years, so that 40 plus or 40?
40, just about 40 on the nose.
Of course, the flood wiped out all that area down there.
Yeah, you had asked me one time what was one of the worst things that happened. I think watching on Channel 5, 40 years worth of curriculum, puppets, visuals, just float away. It was pretty traumatic.
The people that created those marionettes and the stages and all those props, they've moved on, and it would be almost impossible to recreate what we had there because we accumulated those things over decades.
But you shaped so many lives during that time, and I'm sure these people are grateful for that. It was 40 years.
Yeah, 40 years. Let me tell you what is one of the most pleasurable experiences that I have walking through the mall. I hate walking through the mall.
Oh, yeah.
Except when you see someone.
Except all of a sudden I'll hear some grown man say, "Hey, Mr. Mustache." And I'll look and there'll be a grown man with children. I go, "That's one of our kids."
That's nice.
That's a wonderful feeling.
Yeah.
Another project that I'm not sure if the congregation at the time was that aware of it was Creator's Kids. And you put in mega hours on that as well as many other of your friends and people here. We have a clip of that. It's a 2.5 minute clip. Let's take a look at that and we'll talk about it.
Look up, look down, look everywhere around. Everything was made by God. Look left, look right at everything in sight. Everything was made by God. We know the Father cares, so we offer him our prayers. His promises are true. He created me and you. Look high, look low, the Bible tells us so. Everything was made by God. Everything was made by God.
That's nothing. I must have raked leaves for at least 10 hours today.
Well, you ought to try washing a Jeep that's been through a mudslide. How about folding 2,000 loads of laundry? I almost didn't come. I had to stay in my room till I cleaned it up.
I can't believe my ears. You all sound just like the children of Israel.
What do you mean?
Let me tell you about them.
It all started because of the famine in our country. We had to come to Egypt or starve.
You lazy Israelites, do you think this is your day off? Get busy.
We're so tired. Pharaoh makes us work all day and night.
A baby in a basket. It must be Moses. There's the fire. They use that at night.
Go crazy, kids. Let's see where you're gonna get. Stop. No. Get in the right places. What? Give all your worries to him. That sounds right.
Well...
Something bothering you?
Well, I've never been camping before. And it gets really dark at nighttime when the sun goes down.
Well, are you going to be alone?
No, my cub master will be there, and some parents and some friends. They'll be there too.
Well, who else is going to be there?
Oh yeah, I almost forgot, Grandpa. God will be there too.
That's right, Happy. God will be there too.
Excuse me. We have reports that there was a violent earthquake here today. Did you witness this occurrence?
Yes, it was wonderful.
Well, how can an earthquake be so wonderful? How's it so joyful?
No, you don't understand. We're happy because we just got some good news. Jesus was dead and now he's alive again.
That was a huge volunteer effort. I look back on that. And
you were involved.
Yes, and we produced 4 of these.
Yes, we did.
4 volumes. And I've dug out these videos. I've transferred all these to DVD now, and they're available again. But it was just a mega job.
It was a year.
I think we were burned out after it was over with.
Yeah.
There wasn't any pay involved for that. It was a volunteer effort. But anyhow, that was another part of your life story here. Let's talk about cancer. You approached that with humor and prayer.
I did.
Tell me about how it was discovered.
Set up how I found the lump. Go for it, baby.
Yeah. Share.
Is this an X-rated or is this our?
We'll bleep it out.
Carole and I was doing some pro bono work for a person who is incarcerated in Indiana for a crime that I believe he did not commit. But in any case, I was retained by this attorney. Well, retained is not quite the right word. It was pro bono. And we were running an experiment. We built a building and we were going to set the building on fire to demonstrate how the prosecuting theory was incorrect. And Carole decided to join me for this trip to Indiana because I was going to be there a couple days to run these experiments.
I got to stay in a Motel 6.
And so we were staying at the Motel 6 and
Deluxe.
We discovered the lump.
I reached up. I was sitting in bed and I had my Bible, but I wasn't reading my Bible. I was making notes on the outside on pieces of paper of things I had to do because I had stuff to do for the preschool department, stuff to do for the business, for the family, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just working up. And I reached up to scratch and went, oh. I said, Don, I have found a lump. And we both got a little bit frightened at the time. And then we went on home. I made an appointment with the doctor, and I went in to see the doctor. And we went to Vanderbilt. And it was a long day at Vanderbilt. I mean, I had fine needle aspiration and biopsy and just the whole load. And so we were there. It was just a really long day. And Vanderbilt is a teaching hospital. There have interns and people studying to be doctors and doctors studying to be doctors. And it went on and on and on. And everybody in the world in there wanted to come and check out my lump. So on the way home, we're going up I-24. It's January. It's late January. It's rainy. It's cold. It's damp. It's a horrible day. And it was 6 o'clock at night. We had been through it. We're going up 24, and I looked over, and he was gray. I thought, I gotta do something. I said, hey, buddy, you want to feel my breast? He said, not particularly. Why? I said, if you don't, you'll be the only person in Nashville that hasn't today. And he started to laugh, and I said, honey, we're going to get through this. The three of us, you and me and God, we're going to get through this, and it's going to be okay. So then we got to meet with the surgeon, and we were trying to decide between a lumpectomy and a mastectomy. Now, Don's love for me, thank goodness, has never been conditional in the way I look, and he's going, whack it off, just whack it off. And I said, wait a minute, I'm the wacky. Let's talk about this a little bit. So we did talk about it, and we decided on a lumpectomy, and I had the lumpectomy, and they did all kinds of tests, and we went in to see the results of the tests. My sister was with us, and Dr. Frexis opened, and she said, oh my gosh, it's spread to your lymph nodes. And that, to me, it was kind of like a death sentence. It reduced my chances of survival greatly, but I thought, the first thing I thought of was, I'm not going to tell my problem I'm not going to tell God how big my problem is. I'm going to tell my problem how big my God is, and we can do this together. So we went on, and I had to have 4 rounds of chemo, and 4 rounds of a different type of chemo with Taxol, and then followed by radiation. So we did all of that.
What was the nickname that you?
Chemo-sobby. We got ready to go camping one weekend, and we're throwing stuff in a bag as fast as we can. And, I'm bald. And he goes, you taking shampoo and conditioner? No, Don, I'm not. And then he looked at me, and we started to laugh. And I found out one thing, Larry, really very important. When you lose all your hair, when you put on your eyebrows and you draw them on, if you don't do it just right, you go around looking surprised all day long. So you got to be really, really very careful with that.
Let's take a look at a picture of Carole.
My party.
Well.
That was one of the wigs I got at my party.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And another one here.
Yeah.
And you had a going away party for your hair. Tell me about that.
Well, I have a girlfriend who experienced this, and she said, I'm not going to lose my hair, she said. And she said after her second chemo, she was in the shower and she looked down, there was a beaver pelt down there. And she said, that was here and now it's there. And it was really traumatic. And I thought, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do something nobody else has done. I'm going to have a going away party for my hair. And I invited about 4 or 5 women here from church that were my close friends, and they told their friends and told their friends, and we had 22. And it was great. They all came up, and Nala Cheryl was there. Susan Meese videoed it, and we had a lot of fun. We had a big party, and then they shaved, my hairdresser shaved my head, and they gave me all kinds of neat little things, and I had a wig, which I wore for a long time. And it was my way of dealing with something that I felt was going to be traumatic. I figured I was going to be proactive, and God was on my side, and I didn't need hair. So, looked a lot about like you do.
Well, thank you. Kimo Sabu.
You're cute too.
I'm done. Tell me about the worst day in your life.
Well, the worst day of my life. Carole had just had her first chemo treatment, like 2, maybe 3 days prior. I don't remember. I think it was 2 days prior. And she didn't take any of her nausea medicine because she felt fine. Well, it caught up to her. I woke up I think it was a Monday morning. I had the flu. I was sick in bed. I was so sick that I had prescription drugs that were out in the kitchen, and I was in the bedroom. And I didn't have the strength to get out of bed to go get the pills that might have helped me. And while I was laying there in bed, I listened to Carole retching, and it was such a helpless feeling that I couldn't do anything to help her. I couldn't help myself. And I said, God, why is this happening to us? We try to eat right, we exercise, you know the story. Carole has regular checkups. I was angry with the surgeon. I said, how does this happen? She's had regular checkups all along. How does this happen? Why aren't you checking every 6 weeks instead of every year? And so it took me a while. I'm a cancer survivor. You're looking at 2 cancer survivors here.
But we did not have a going away party for your prostate.
No, we didn't.
We can still have that party.
Well,
it just went.
I really didn't need it anyhow. I realized later that Carole has been a wonderful source of encouragement to people all over the country. Carole has such a positive attitude and an upbeat spirit and a loving spirit that friends of friends of friends that have cancer from California to all over the country, they call Carole because she lifts their spirit and gives them hope. And I hope that the people that are watching tonight, not only the people in this room, that you're looking at 2 survivors, and if you get the dreaded C word thrown at you, understand that there is hope and you can beat it because we've proved it.
Yep.
But let me tell you, as I was laying there in bed, this is absolutely the worst day of my life. Who comes to our rescue? Nurse Nancy. Now, I'm disappointed Nancy Covert is not here tonight. But Nancy Covert has on several occasions in our lifetime come to our rescue, and she came to our rescue on that day.
She sure did. Yep.
And you know, I've lived with this woman 53 years. She's been my lover, my business partner, my spouse. And she and Nancy Covert are 2 of the most generous, loving people that I've ever been around. That to me, they just exude the Spirit of Christ. And I just say to this woman, thank you for those 53 years.
You're welcome. Your ears okay?
Yeah, they're surviving.
Okay, good.
And thank you so much for sharing your story with us and being on Stories of Amazing Grace. Been a good guest, don't you think?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You did a good job.
Thank you, sir.
We give the traditional mugs, but we have had a prayer first.
Oh, yes, please.
As well. Father, we're thankful for this couple and what they meant to this church over many, many years, and the lives that have been touched and influenced and drawn closer to you. Give them many more years of service in your kingdom. Bless us, Father, as a church, as a body of people that love you and want to spread the word to others in this neighborhood and abroad. We pray through your Son. Amen. Thank you for coming. Next month, it's, I was about to say Colonel, it's General Paul Johnson. He had gone from raising hogs to flying warthogs. His story is next month, so be sure and be with us. Thank you for coming.